First take.
Has this pause already stopped? This would be the title of the talk I had with Peter, and this is a sentence, one of the first sentences he said, um, which I adored, and because it reveals a certain paradox for me. And we talked about this paradox of the Corona time, about how a crisis made visible things that were there already, but they seemed to be covered up. And suddenly, in this time of a pause, it all popped up into the space, into visibility, creating a possibility of change. And Peter was really naming it very good for me, saying that the argument that something cannot be done fast is not right. Because we've seen it all, that planes can be stopped in a day, borders can be closed and opened, funding can be completely redistributed, and this is all possible. And on the other hand, we also could face different ways that the governments were dealing with situation. And we were wondering with Peter, why is it that, for example, in Berlin, it seems that the action created the possibility for many people to feel taken care of. So why Berlin is such a safe heaven for a lot of people? Is it because of the subcultures? Is it because of the leaving your country of origin where you're not agreeing with the government's policy? And why Berlin? And I've learned something precious, that that Berlin has always been a special place. I mean, of course, there is the high price of the war, which Peter kind of highlighted for me, saying, maybe this whole Second World War, the price paid, the pain, the loss, the murder, and acknowledging that, maybe this created a possibility for a shift and a different policy, governmental and also city policy, to emerge. But also, Berlin in the 60s and 70s and 80s was an island. It wasn't the place where one could freely move, or where it wasn't ideal, but it had two very distinct qualities that Peter mentioned. So one of them was that the men didn't have to go to the army. So there were a lot of 17 years old men who would come to Berlin and register in order to avoid the army. And the other thing was the clubs, that the city would never sleep, that there was not a closing time. So the bars and the clubs would be open, so people would just come to have party. And Peter was saying about a certain nostalgia that is around that subject, because in the end, now it became a big marketing strategy and a big thing that all the people from all over the world fly in, get drunk, get wasted, have a lot of sex, go completely wild dancing, and then return home. So what was before what was before an organic development became a marketing strategy, or a market, as simply a market. And then we talk with Peter about performance and what we miss about being live. Because now we create these beautiful images with Ollie moving the bottle and Peter being a violet creature with a stone, while Pavel is dancing with textiles. And yet we're missing the tangibility of the sensations, right? Being together in that space and feeling really the energy of them moving, or seeing how they are three-dimensional, feeling how they change inside of them. This we can see somehow, we can connect to that, and yet it is much harder. There's something about the performance. Peter was talking about, this multidirectionality or three-dimensionality, that is something he's missing. And he misses the whole ritual of being together, the whole ritual of going to the show, preparing, getting there, watching something, going home, and the meeting that happens through that, right?
Just before the lockdown, Caroline made a solo. When she was telling me about it during our online meeting, she described that some of the motivation for the solo came from watching other artists work. As she was attending performances in Berlin, she had a feeling of dissatisfaction, a recurring feeling of dissatisfaction. She wanted to say to other Berlin makers, come on, use these amazing theater spaces and equipment that is available to you. Come on, use your skills in dancing. Be more generous with using your voice, costume, expression. Show off more. And so Caroline made this solo piece with the elements she missed watching. She worked with comedy, virtuosity, overexpression, shouting, costumes. When we were talking during our online meeting, I had to pause for a moment to help my son in making neon color slime. He figured out by himself how to do it. And when I apologized to Caroline for interrupting, she said, I love slime. I had a lot of slime in my solo. Just before the lockdown, her solo was presented as a part of Short Festival that Caroline organized together with her collective. She organized the event, she danced in Ivan's piece, and she did her own solo, all in a single weekend. It was a great experience, she said, but she would not like to be in so many different roles of organizer, dancer, maker, fundraiser, all at once. That's it.
So here we go. For Ivan. You're wearing a white tank top and a gold necklace. And you're asking yourself, what am I doing here? These trees, 1100 trees you planted in Sweden, do they ask themselves, what are we doing here? I also heard that people in Berlin, they already making some raves in the parks. And do they ask themselves, what are we doing here? Yoga with Tim, Pilates with Hannah. What is dance for you? What do you want your dance to be? Extract, condense, dancing friends, and friendly dances. What is there apart from dance? Did you put all those things too close to each other? Dance the joy, enjoy the experiment, experiment with dance. And I can see it very clear, I can see it at this very moment. You rent a studio once a week for a couple of hours and you practice, you dance. You train in movement, you practice the physicality, you find the continuity, and you practice your practice. And then you're saying, we need people to feed ourselves.
Together with Oli, we began our conversations for Moving Mirrors back in 2016. And it feels that during those 4 years, change became a big part of our lives. Last year, Oli moved to Montpellier to do his master's there. So from being a freelance artist in Berlin, became a student in France, was a part of the institution, was a part of the system, which gives the sense of security for him. 2 days ago, we had a very deep chat about latest events in our lives, which were the consequences of a global pandemic. And one of the questions that Oli had to face was, where does he want to be during those unsure times? What place would be his home? We also talked about how previously Oli says that he would take for granted the fact that audience comes to his performances, and how now he feels what a privilege that is, and how special it is that people come and people gather, and what a beautiful advantage it is of working with performing, that it gives you opportunity to gather with people that you know or people you don't know, and how Oli would like to include that, or include more thought into it in the works that he will be creating from now on. We also allowed ourselves to call the pandemic an apocalypse in our conversation. And then Oli pointed out how this specific apocalypse revealed the need for kinesthetic empathy and for creating the intimacy